Hello. All right, we're live. How's everybody doing? Welcome to another Fire Engineering Pinwell Humpday Hangout. And we are with our regular panel today. And we've got just about everybody here, but we are missing two critical cogs of our team today. And just want to pass along why they're not here and keep them in your thoughts. Bill Gustin, of course, is in demand, and he's teaching a company officer development program in Miami-Dade and was unable to make it today. But more importantly, we want to keep Mike Dugan and all of the FDNY firefighters who've been affected by the environment at 9/11. In your thoughts and prayers today, Mike wanted to pass along his gratitude and appreciation for being on the panel, and he's sorry he can't be here, but today is an important day for him. Just like a lot of the firefighters that work down there, he's getting an appointment for a physical that he gets every year, and we're hoping and praying for good news from him. It's something that happens every year, but he did want to make sure that we noted the importance of these physicals for the firefighters and all the workers that work down on 9/11. And we want to make sure we keep Captain Dugan in our thoughts and prayers, along with everybody else. With that being said, we'll go ahead through introductions. I'm Jason Hoevelmann, and I'm a battalion chief at Florissant Valley Fire Protection District. And we'll start with the good Chief Bobby Halton of Fire Engineering.
Hey, hi, welcome everybody, and thank you to our host, Key Fire Hose. You know, Key Fire Hose, located in Dothan, Alabama, one of the most important companies in the American Fire Service today, not only for the incredible products that they do, but their relentless pursuit of R&D and constantly improving, the water delivery products that they create for us in the fire service, and the proud sponsors of this Humpday Hangout. So thank you to our good friends at Key Fire Hose. So go to keyfirehose.com after this and see about their amazing line of products and some of the great training that Key Fire Hose is providing to the fire service. Hey, the February edition of Fire Engineering Magazine is out digitally. Fire Engineering is only available through a subscription, so we hope you're a subscriber. Some amazing stuff in this month's magazine. As always, it's a magazine that's written by you, the firefighters. It's not a staff of writers, the same old 12 voices month after month. Fire Engineering is you, the fire service, month after month, providing stories about their experiences, things you're passionate about or interested in. So we've got everything in here, from a great article on rural water movement by Bill Atkins, did a really good video with it. There's a great piece by Jerry Tracy, great friend of ours, and Robbie Fisher from Suquamish, Washington. Amazing guy. If you don't know Rob, probably one of the most dynamic forces in the fire service today. Does a thing on quint positioning in this month's magazine. That's an incredible read, as well as a little video that he put in there. So, and then for full disclosure, there's an amazing, just an amazing editorial by an ancient, I guess I found out today there was an article on Firefighter Nation, which I hope you're looking at every day, where an elderly couple lit a fire to ambush some people. Unfortunately, that elderly couple's 5 years younger than me, so watch that elderly stuff. But anyway, yeah, I had the great chance to write an editorial about my friend Tommy Franks, a famous Frenchman named Anart de Pique, and some dude whose call sign is drama. Please check it out. I'm very proud of it, and very proud of drama. So, hey, without further ado, remember you can talk to us by using hashtag #EthiTalk. Jason, most of the folks know most of the panelists here. So I guess as you go around with the questions, folks can just say, hey, this is Clark, and I'm here rolling the dice on the strip, and hey, this is Sam Hittle, and I'm out here in Wichita, that kind of thing. So
all right,
keep it short and sweet and get right to the meat and potatoes. But remember, Key Fire Hose and hashtag #EthiTalk if you've got an important question. Oh, and one last thing. Classes are selling out at FDIC already. The Tower class, Tower Rescue class, has 5 slots left in it. There's over 60 people already in Nozzle Forward, taught by Aaron Fields, who is going to be winning the Instructor of the Year award from the Instructor Society this year. Wow. He is selling out. Several of the classes have sessions that are already sold out and limited space left in some of the really cool classes. Also, if you want to catch yourself a quick break on price, if you sign up for the iWomen Leadership Conference on Monday, that gives you 10% off the whole gig. So great way to save some money. hit FDIC. You can still take hot classes on Tuesday and catch the rest of the conference. So we hope you see you there at FDIC. You know, these classes do sell out. I hate to tell folks but they do. And once they're sold out, they're sold out. So get registered now, and we'll see you in April.
Sounds great. Thanks, Chief. And also, the introductions wise, we could probably see all of these people at FDIC at some point during the week if you want to run into them. And it's a great conference. I've already picked my hot classes and sent them in. And I hope it's the one conference. I don't go to many because of work schedule, but it's the one conference I go to. And it's the one that I always pick alternate classes for because I have been bumped out of my first choice. So it's important to get that in. So today we're going to talk about attached garage fires. And when Bill called me and asked about doing this for him and with the panel, we both decided that over the years we've had plenty of attached garage fires that 20 years ago we might have done a little bit different had we known some things that we know today. And we've got some video that Sam Hittle's going to narrate us through when we get to that in a few pictures. But right off the bat, I'm sure we've all got a story of attached garage fires that have gone well and have gone poorly. And I want to start with Dan Shaw out in Virginia. Dan, what's a memorable attached garage fire you had that you can recall, and kind of walk us through your attack mode, and if you would do anything different today than what you did before, or what your SOGs are now?
Yeah, man. Well, good afternoon. Always great to sit and talk with you guys. So obviously where I work in Northern Virginia, we are, the suburban populace is enormous. So we have a lot of residential structures, and it's pretty consistent across the country with the statistics we see where percent of the fires we run are in residential structures. So as the footprint over the last 30 years has grown 70%, it stands to reason we're going to have more attached garages, and Northern Virginia is no different than that. And one attached garage fire that really sticks out to me that was really more of a vehicle fire was ended up being a Mayday close call for us, but it's just something out of the norm. The attached garage fires, as you said, we can probably share stories back and forth about ones that went well and things that didn't work out well. But this one really stuck in my mind because it was a two-story single-family dwelling with attached garage. They had a Mercedes that was on fire inside the garage, and the garage door was up. As the company stretched the line up there, I was on the second arriving engine, so our job was to go into the structure and down to where the door was that led into the occupancy was. And while we were stretching our line, the first company officer walked in, just get an assessment of the vehicle fire, how well involved it was. It was starting to come out of the vehicle structure. That was just about the time that the memory of the mine that was inside the Mercedes told the automatic door controller to go ahead and close the door. And so the garage door came down, trapping the company officer in the garage while his company was still getting their line stretched, putting their mask on. And imagine their surprise when we look up and see a door closing, fire in a structure, and an officer by themselves with a hose line. It ended up being a good learning tool for us. No injuries other than guys trying to effect a rescue and get to them. But it's just something to think about. We kind of think vehicle fires, run-of-the-mill. We think garage fires, it's not really where people live. But the reality is, the garage and the basement are the two places where everyone puts everything they don't want in the rest of their house. So it's a huge fuel load and really leaves us quite vulnerable because, we're talking about attached garage fires. It's leading directly in the occupancy. And I'm sure we'll talk about this more in depth, but, as the case with that is that, the building codes are in our favor and they have fire rated doors, but, the minute you buy your house and you get your permit, game on, you can do whatever you want to it. And we see that a lot in where we work, and I know in more of the urban areas you see it where single room occupancies are par for the course to pay for a lot of the mortgages people have. So we can't rely upon building codes to keep us safe per se. They're great for the start, but once that house is occupied, that homeowner can do whatever they want. So they can take that fire rated door, they can take it off. They can prop it open because they're sick of trying to open it up with their hands full of groceries, so they just get it propped open. So, really open our eyes up to, as with any fires we talk about, it's just not being complacent and not slipping into that complacency when, we'll go out in 2 seconds, it's not that big, and something like that occurs.
Yeah, absolutely. And we, and also something that we were discussing earlier was everybody's demographics have different features with with sorry about that.
Yeah,
With
tell Frank to wait.
yeah, I know. I told him don't interrupt me here. But people have different styles of garages and attached garages, and Daryl brought up a great point. I'll let him explain, but he's got a kind of different dynamic with attached garages out in the Bay Area.
Yeah, and it brings up one of the most memorable fires for me. It was just early in my career, and it was a fire I was not on, but Oakland is a neighboring city to San Francisco. And early in my career, a lieutenant named Lieutenant Mambretti lost his life in the line of duty in a attached garage. And something similar in both of our cities is we have a lot of hillside homes. Most of Oakland has detached garages, but in the hills, we have very steep topography and a lot of cars are parking on the top floor. So you enter the house in the top, and that's where the garage is, and that's where Lieutenant Mambretti met his fate. And a garage door closed, as Dan described, with several members inside of the garage, and trapped those members inside of this garage. It was a wind-driven fire, and you know, one of the lessons learned is I am a proponent of hitting these fires head on from the garage, but actually making an interior attack into the garage without the door controlled is something that was a lesson learned. Several things came out about maybe disabling the track, maybe propping it open with a pike pole or something, but that is a hazard, is that we have to keep in mind that if it's a roll-up door, the roll-up door may close. I don't think it was ever determined exactly what caused that door to close. It could have been a short in the wiring. I remember hearing the hose string may have hit the button. Whatever happened, the door closed and it trapped those members inside. And having some type of saw available, you know, quickly in case the door is to close, even if we are outside of that environment, is something that could be very, very handy.
Yeah, preventing the door from coming down is a big deal. And on some of the newer areas around us, I don't know if it's this way where you are, but the home builders are building these subdivisions with cookie cutter houses, and you have to buy extras if you want them. And some of those extras are man doors that go to the garage. And if the homeowner doesn't spend the money in certain subdivisions, because the codes are jurisdictional, there's not a state code. So there's some jurisdictions that these houses, you have to buy the man door coming out of the garage. And so you have to go through the overhead door if you want to maintain the integrity of the interior of that house. But some of the methods, and I'll pass this on to Sam, and he'll be able to intro his video, like vice grips on the rails we've used. Pike poles have been okay for us, but sometimes they get kicked or they'll lose some of their integrity by getting kicked out. But Sam, what have you got to add to that?
There we go.
Sam, you're muted.
All right, there we go. I would say that pike poles can tend to be knocked out, which I can tell that, you know, if that's what you have, that's what you have. If you have a really tall garage door, something like that, you can always use a ladder to hold it up where the pike pole doesn't reach. You can always put the forks of the Halligan over the rail, and if you just grab the pike and the adze and twist it, it'll crease that rail just enough to hold those wheels from coming down. Because really, they should have set limits. It doesn't take a lot of resistance force to tell the garage door to go back up.
You know, and something I'm thinking about is there's other hazards, even if this door isn't to close, especially detached garages. Like in my house, we have an attached garage, and my daughter's bedroom is directly above that. The house I grew up in, the garage protrudes out the front of the house, so it has a peak to it, which allows for a lot of storage. And in this attached garage, if you're in there, there could be a tremendous amount of storage over your head with lightweight truss construction. And that could be hidden by very dense smoke. So I think it's very hazardous to enter that garage until this fire is controlled and we can see what's over our head, because you have no idea what is being stored above your head that can collapse on you, which could be a greater hazard than the door itself.
And not only that, I mean, you bring up a good point. One thing we do know that is over our head if the garage door is open is that garage door. And we tend to want to enter dead center, where not only should we attack from an angle just like a car fire and not expose ourselves to direct impingement, but we should also come in on the side of the garage door by the header, as opposed to going dead center where that, if there's thermal degradation, that garage door can fall down on us.
All right, so Daryl brought up a good point, and he likes to, and Sam actually brought up the point too, is hitting it from the outside first. You may not have a man door, difficulties getting through the garage door. What is your preference on hose deployment on these types of fires? Is it through the front door into the house to protect the inside, but risking compromising the integrity of that corridor, or finding a way to get in from the garage, Clark?
Yes, Clark Lamping from Clark County Fire Department here in Las Vegas. I prefer to go right to the garage. Get a large 2.5-inch smooth bore down and get fast water on that garage as quickly as possible. We can deploy that line off the back. And, we have real short driveways here in Las Vegas. So, you can take 1 or 2 sticks of hose, put it off to the side, not directly in the driveway, but off to the side. The reason we do that is because all the runoff, we could have flammable liquids pouring out of that, and I don't want to be kneeling in that. So 2.5-inch smooth bore. And then as that line is set up and flowing, then I, as the officer, I make my way to the front door, see if the door is unlocked. If not, we have another company go there, force the front door, and I want to get eyes on the interior of the house to see what the conditions of the interior of the house are before I go humping hose lines completely through the house and try to access that man door. And when we open that man door, that's a fire-rated door. In Clark County, it can be either solid wood door or it can be a honeycomb interior door with steel door. It has a 20-minute fire rating on it. I don't want to open that door. If the interior conditions are clear, I don't want to open that door into the house and introduce all that smoke and heat into the house if we don't have to. So that's my primary objective, is get fast water on that fire.
Yeah, I agree. We had a fire, it's been several years ago now, where we had an attached garage, and it was attached by an enclosed breezeway. And we were lucky enough to have 2 companies arrive pretty much close at the same time. And the first company, which was the one on, we went through the front door just to see if we had any penetration from the garage, which we didn't. They ended up putting the fire out from the exterior. But you've got to have some patience and some discipline for your crews to not take that interior door. And like you mentioned, the codes today are in our favor, but you mentioned earlier before we came on that it's not always, the codes aren't always increasing the level of protection.
Yeah, correct. In Clark County, I was told that in the 2000s, the building code was minimum requirement for sheetrock, and the garage was 5/8 on the walls and on the lid. If there is a living space above the garage. Now, 2016, around 2000, the codes changed, and they actually reduced the thickness of the drywall that's required. So now in Clark County, the walls only have to be 1/2-inch sheetrock, and the lid still has to be 5/8 only if there's living space in the garage. So we actually saw a reduction in building codes in Clark County.
So although the codes help us, sometimes it's not always increasing the amount of protection that we're getting.
Correct.
There's probably a couple things people in the audience may be thinking about, and Clark and I had discussions, so I know why we're on the same page. You mentioned a 2.5-inch hand line fitted with a smoothbore nozzle for this type of fire. So when we talk about hitting the fire head on, some people are concerned that you're going to be pushing fire into the occupancy. If you're using a solid stream, you are not pushing air, and we're learning this from some of those UL studies we've all heard about. You are extinguishing fire. If you're going to be using a combination nozzle on a wide pattern, you can be driving that heat and smoke into the occupancy if that door is open, or driving it into the attic. So that's why he's using a smooth bore. As far as the 2.5, it's a no-brainer. We can learn techniques like from Aaron Fields, if you're taking his nozzle forward class or other classes, where one person can kneel on this line and be dumping a tremendous amount of water, because these garages are loaded with anything and everything. There's a tremendous fire load. It's like a small commercial space, barbecue pits, pesticides, gasoline, diesel, cars. There could be anything, and having that higher volume weapon is going to afford you a much greater opportunity to extinguish this fire before it extends into the dwelling.
Yeah, and Jason, to Daryl's point, I don't think we need to get as deep philosophical understanding as pushing fire and everything else. It really just comes down to our basic tactics. And what really my belief is, if the door's up, you put water on the fire. If the door's down, and you have a long invested process to get the door open, then yeah, you probably should go through the structure, compartment the fire, keep it to where the garage is. But you think about the most basic tactics we have. When would you ever walk past a room on fire to go walk into it and look at the same room on fire from a smaller door? So if you have a large 6-foot door wide open with fire blowing out of it, why would I walk inside a structure to go look at a 3-foot door and say, yeah, the fire's still there. It's still looking at me. Especially in our places that are short staffed. I mean, the key is for us, if you see fire, put water on the fire. And then, obviously we start getting dissecting to what Clark and what Daryl were saying is what stream you're playing on. But for these members in these departments where they don't have the luxury like my department or you guys, where they can have some people to put some investment in studies as what stream or what nozzle works better, and they are just given what their department can afford, which might be a hand-me-down. Just think about the tactics in which they're employing and put water onto the fire. A giant room of fire to go look at from a different direction. Just put water on it.
It sounds so simple. The other thing is even just going, it is, but just going through the house with a small line. Once you do get there, you're going to have too small of a line in many cases to really extinguish it. And these doors, we all have seen rooms with fire on one side, and you open a closed door, and it's absolutely clear that the door is doing its job. But we'd certainly need a pike pole in there to start pulling above and see if it's extending into the house or even above that door.
And real quick, when you're using that 2.5 of the smooth bore, you want to make sure to really whip that stream around, break up that stream, because if you do hit that back wall of the garage full force with that 2.5 smooth bore, you could easily blow that sheetrock through, and now you've penetrated the house. So try to keep that water off that back wall and break up that stream as much as you can into large droplets to absorb some of that heat.
I would say the same goes for the ceiling.
Yeah, keep it off the ceiling as well.
These things take a while to put out. I mean, they're basically dumpster fires of great magnitude attached to someone's house. Chief Hoevelmann, did you want to go ahead and go into that video? And that way, when we're talking tactics, that we all have the same image?
Yeah, go ahead, Sam. Let's play it.
Okay. We'll see if Shannon's still there.
She's there.
All right, perfect.
Takes a second to load, fellas.
Now, if you're watching this, hover your mouse over the screen that shows the video, and then click on that. It'll bring it up to full screen.
Awkward silence. All right, Shannon, where you at?
So who submitted that video?
That was somebody found that from Sacramento. There's another video that goes with it. I don't know if Shannon has it, but basically it shows the fire burning, the magnitude of smoke, and then of course one door was down, one door was up, and then of course we get to vent ignition eventually, which kind of brings up the interesting point. If the door's down, is it up? And then of course, one of the things that my first concern is getting inside. That doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to go inside, but we're going to look at the house and see if we have extension inside. I think the fire service has lost the concept of confinement. It's either extinguishment or defensive. And so if we have heavy fire extended inside, that first line may have to go inside just to hold it until we can get that garage door cut, or we can get a knock on the garage door with the second line. I mean, at the very least, this is a 2-line fire. I think we all agree to that.
Yeah.
But if we do go inside, the primary purpose is not to extinguish, it's to hold it. so we can get that search.
Yeah, and since you mentioned search, it'd be very difficult for anyone to survive being in that space with that type of heat. But don't be so quick to say that you've completed your secondary search. Make sure you check the vehicle, under the vehicle if somebody was working on it, in the trunk of the car, in all parts before you give that secondary search.
I think she has the second video up. You guys want to try that?
Yeah, let's try it.
Sure.
All right, here we go.
And this is the same building?
I believe so, but I'm not going to testify to that. There's that vent ignition.
That door held it well. You could see how they penetrated the sheetrock right above that door.
Correct.
Just to check for extension, looks like.
It's amazing what those doors will do.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah,
So-
we had a fire just not a few weeks ago, and Shannon's got the pictures, but I won't have her put them up because it shows almost identical to what the video showed, except for the entire house was involved. The entire house. It was a set fire. And the garage was virtually untouched. You look at the house, and the house is charred and black, and you look at the garage, and it's just mostly water damage and from us tromping through it. But the door held, even after that fully involved house fire for the most part. It's just the reverse of what we're talking about, but it just shows the importance of that door. And like somebody brought up earlier, if we do go take that line inside and open that barrier, it's very possible we're not going to have the right size line. You look at the newer subdivisions, there's 2, 3, 4 car garages that are huge in area with a lot of contents in them that if we do get inside and open that door, we're probably not going to have big enough line if we're just taking a 1 3/4 inch hose.
And James, I think you make a good point to the belief that we have this misnomer in the fire service that there's a one size fits all solution. I mean, look, fires we go to are dynamic. We have to be dynamic in our decision making. And really, what that means is if you may not have the same staffing eyes that I have, or you have, or Sammy, or Daryl, or Clark has, but you have to use your people appropriately. So if you have an EMS crew that stays outside, perhaps they use the 2.5 on the garage while you take an 1 3/4 to the interior and hold that position. Because what we know about fires is that what's killing most of these people is when we introduce the byproducts of that fire, smoke, that they come overcome. Very rarely do we have someone that's burned to death. And really, I think it goes back to us looking at, taking some data-driven tactics and strategy and tactics. Look, the residential fire accounts for almost 70 to 80% of the fires we run in the United States. Every 64 seconds, we're running one of those. And so if you look at the residential building fires and say, all right, the most common ones we run are the kitchen fire, the bedroom fire, the attic fire, the basement fire, the garage fire. 5 fires. If you can develop 5 different tactical plans for those 5 fires and maybe a couple contingencies, you can't tell me that every fire department in the country can't say, all right, we have 10 plays. I might call Omaha, but we have 10 plays. We have the attached garage fire, and hey, we've already practiced this. Line here, doors down, we take the line inside, the compartment, just like Sammy said. And he's right. I mean, a lot of our strategy and tactics have gotten away that we must go for extinguishment every time. Yeah, we're going to get to that point because of the incredible, awesome power of properly placed water. But what we're trying to do is figure out where the fire is. Like a fireplace, it's got intake and exhaust, it's got plenty of fuel. So figure out where the intake is and then compartment this fire to keep it away from the unburned sections. And that only comes to our sets and reps of looking at these videos like this and see the aftermath. But fire blown out of a garage that had smoke a minute before and the doors open shouldn't surprise us. That's what a fire does. It's looking for that proper mixture, and it got it. So I mean, looking at something as simple as that and looking at our statistics that, hey, look, come on, 5 strategies, and one of those is the attached garage fire. And then maybe you have a couple contingencies in there that, depending upon my staffing, whether it's door up or door down, this is what we're going to do every single time.
Yeah, when you mentioned it's not always one size fits all, I think of this area when I'm riding my road bike. There's some these mansions with these massive 3-car garages and these 5,000 square foot homes, and a 2.5 may not be enough for them. Maybe they should think about a RAM monitor, because there's going to be a lot more fuel, a lot more square footage, and the need for even greater stream reach, and the problem of that getting into a 5,000 square foot home is going to be a much greater problem for some of these areas.
We're talking about, Dan brought up efficient and fast water delivery. And I know for us at our department, we switched to Key Hose for obvious reasons. They do a fantastic job. They've listened to firefighters and the problems and the challenges that they've had on the fire ground, and help solve those as it relates to hose development and deployment. And so we want to thank Key Hose again for help sponsor these Humpday Hangouts. And Daryl, yeah, go ahead, Chief.
We're talking about these attached structures, and I've had quite a few of these garage fires. And one of the things to remember, Lasky and I actually had a fire just like this. It wasn't actually what you'd call a McMansion or anything. It was about a maybe 3,800, 3,600 square foot home, 3-car garage. But the access to the attic space, there was 2 accesses. There was a man door at the top of the stairs from the interior, but there was also one of these pull down cascading ladders that you fold down. Now, you might have 5-inch sheetrock, you might have 1/2-inch sheetrock all around that rest of that ceiling, but that pull down door, that's that cheap little lightweight plywood that has that door attached to it that just goes back up. I mean, it's next to nothing. That burnt right through on this one fire Ricky and I had, traveled into the void space above. It was unfinished, and so it's like a storage area for these good folks. And they had, the standard array, Christmas, old toys from the kids, boxes that they were saving in case they needed to return a product or whatnot, old clothes, books, everything under the sun. So just a perfect fuel load in there. Figure your Christmas tree arrangement. No drywall or anything to protect that ceiling space. So it articulated very quickly to that area, and then created quite a volume of fire above the garage during that event. So when you look at the construction, as I think it was Jason pointed out earlier, depending on what the homeowner asks for and does, you could have one of these access stairways that come down. You could have a man door or not have a man door. The residential fire, although we call it the bread and butter, and we look at the typical this and the typical that, the cookie cutter model that we had back in the 40s and 50s, the Levittowns and places like that, that model's kind of been replaced in most places with kind of this cookie cutter plus, where you can do some structural stuff so that your home looks different than the house next to it. They'll have 4 or 5 plans, but then they'll allow you to do these minor modifications and add-ons inside of that. When we were talking earlier about the nozzle placement and the attack and where it comes from, every fire is going to have a story of its own. Find out what that story is. It's always great to have riding positions and predetermined tasks for people to perform, but where you perform that task and how you perform that task has to do with your ability to read the fire, read the building, understand your resources, and make good decisions. And in hindsight, sometimes those decisions are wrong. Brilliant you in hindsight. I can tell you yesterday's lottery numbers too, for all the good that'll do you. But when you're making decisions on the fire ground, bounce it off a few of the other folks standing next to you. Hey, what do you think? What are you seeing? And get some input, and then make the best decisions you can. A lot of what we're talking about here too is flow rates and air. So if the door's up and it's on fire, that fire's got all the air it's going to ever want to have, and it's going to the races. Now we know from a lot of the work we've done about fire spread and behavior, if you can control that air, God bless you. Control that air. Use a smaller opening, a window, a man door, whatever, to attack that fire. So pretty interesting stuff when we're talking about those kinds of spaces. As always, don't make the assumption that just because it's the garage that there's not a person in there. That there's always that possibility. So you always got to have that in the back of your head. So it's what a lot of folks look at as, oh, that's a common problem. Old Will Rogers said it best. He said, it ain't what you know that's going to kill you. It's what you know that ain't so. So, always keep that in the back of your head when you're looking at one of these garage fires. If we look at the classic Canadian fire, interesting story. Lady had her car caught, her Mercedes caught fire. So this rocket surgeon drove it home back into her into her garage, into her attached garage, which was like a below grade kind of deal, and parked it, went inside and called the fire department. Thank God. Those people keep us in business. But it turned out to be a pretty hairy fire for some Canadian firefighters who ended up getting trapped in another room, unrelated to the tactics, but a lot of stuff happened. But these fires are fascinating and really interesting to look at. And in most communities today across America, what we're seeing is you can respond to folks in a trailer park, and 2 blocks away there's a McMansion. A couple miles. So it's not as easy as it was back in the day when the Levitowns of America and the row houses and whatnot was all pretty much what it was. Today it's such a potpourri of diverse and multifaceted construction elements. You really got to take a hard look at it, and just really great conversation.
You mentioned different construction layouts and things, and I was talking before we came on the air about 2 or 3 areas in our fire district which are about World War II era. They built these small brick homes with basements in them, and there's, like I said, pretty big areas, pockets of them in our area, and they all have basements. And over the years, they finished the basements. But when they built them, for whatever reason, the access to those basements are in the garage. You walk down, they're on the very back of the garage, like on the Charlie side, and you walk down, and at the bottom, they're basically at the foundation of the house, and that's how you get into the basement. The other aspect of that is that those garages have man doors, and they're on the Bravo side, and as soon as you walk in the man door, the stairs are right in front of you. And so if you are going to use that as an attack on the garage, your people need to be aware that that's an area. We already have identified that because of basement fires, right? We don't want to be crawling in on top for basement fires, but it's just an interesting other perspective. And not all of them have walk-up exterior exits on them. So another thing that the chief alluded to that is something you don't know what you don't know, and we've seen a lot of this, and I'm sure you have too, is people convert garages into living spaces or into function spaces other than parking their car. I've actually seen where a 2-car garage, one side is still a garage, and the other side has been divided and made into a living space, but not everybody gets rid of the garage door, which can make what appears to be a garage fire an actual living space fire.
Yeah, that's extremely common in the city of San Francisco. Probably half of the city, if not more, that first floor garage is now an SRO and converted into a living space with a functional garage.
And this, I think you shine a light on, and you and Chief Halton and Daryl, I mean, is something that good friend Larry Schultz always says when he teaches is knowing your building stock, and Brandon was a big fan of it. It's really knowing the environment, our playing field when we go out there. And the 2 things I would push people to is that really are unconventional is or Lowe's, and look at the storage solutions they have for garages. And just to what Sandy was saying, now they have all these racks and bins and everything else that gets hung from the ceiling. That's what you're going to crawl underneath of. So you might as well have an idea what exactly is occurring, or what's going to be inside that structure you're going to go into. And the other part of that is looking at what, when there's a new development being built, upon us to get out there and know your building stock and see what the names are that realtors are using. And an example we use in class is, imagine if you run an attached garage fire and a parent who's burnt because they're trying to save their kid runs up to you and says to you as you get out of the right front seat of the engine, "My kid is trapped in the frog." You would look at him and go, "What in the hell does that mean?" But that's a term that realtors use when they sell houses. They call it the family room over the garage. That's what's ingrained in them when they buy this house, and that was added extra. In their time of chaos and stress, they're going to come to you and say, "My kid's in the frog," because that's where the room is. So us being abreast of just the different changes and trends of how they're building things, whether it's going to be a McMansion or it's a house that's eaten by a McMansion, they redo it, or it's when they build a brand new development, the terms they use, it's incumbent on us because we got to deal with all this. So there is never a moment of not learning that should be in the firehouse, because we have so many things we have to stay on top of that we can then in turn apply to our strategy and tactics regardless of what fire we run, especially the attached garage.
You know, I was just thinking of a fire I was at, and since a lot of these garages have vehicles in it, still treat that as you would a vehicle fire. If we have a bunch of firefighters overhauling around and in front of this vehicle, they have very limited space to try to get out. If what happened here was a fuel tank breaking, and now you have fuel and embers and that igniting, and it was a close call. However, having a dry chem or CO2 extinguisher nearby, or having foam now in the line, could be something that, you know, just plain water isn't going to quickly suppress, but have somebody still staffing the line, or some extinguishers, even having a tow truck, being able just to drag that car out, you know, prior to overhauling could be a good idea. But it's definitely a hazard having a bunch of firefighters in and around the car all trying to overhaul.
I would say something else on the overhaul. If you look at what code says, every so many feet they have to do a complete fire stop on. They're talking newer homes, and then every 10 foot high they have to put a fire block in. Now, a lot of times we'll see fire blocking in the garage walls just to reinforce the OSB that acts as a wind brace to keep that wall from racking. But if they do decide to, if they have a higher garage, like we have some people that put their campers in their garage, so they have those high garage doors, then we're going to have fire blocking that could be 12 foot up in the wall, and we go in there and we start poking around looking for extension, and we poke below that fire block, we get a false sense of security that there's no fire in the wall.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead, Clark.
Daryl, I could just see me telling the chief, "Hey, chief, we need to respond to tow truck on every garage fire now." See what he says about that.
Yeah, I went, like I said, we don't get many attached garage fires, but about a month ago, I went to one in our hills. It was a 2-story house, and where the cars parked up on the second floor, and it collapsed the garage, and those cars actually went, you know, they fell down. That could have been a hazard too. So it's good to definitely have, if you have this kind of elevated garage situation in your city, making sure that we're really looking at collapse potential, you know, which a lot of attached garages are on a slab or at ground level. But if it's elevated, make sure someone's looking at collapse potential and keeping people away.
In that regard, we do have houses in our area that have it's a standard house, and you pull into the garage just like you would anywhere else. But if you go around to the back in the basement, there's a complete shop or garage, and it's a supported slab with a steel beam. And we've had tractor fires, larger types of equipment that they park in there, and you have to keep in mind, you know, the degradation of that steel beam and the concrete above it, because it's not like going into a regular household garage. It's on a slab, something to that effect. The other thing we mentioned before were the codes, and we talked about the drywall and how it's protecting. In Clark's case, they've reduced the amount of drywall or the thickness of it, but the doors have to be rated. And it led us into a brief discussion about unattached garages and the importance of understanding the differences in those codes, because it may determine a little bit difference on how you can't treat them the same.
Yeah, we, like I said, a lot of our city is detached garages. And before we started, we were talking about codes where we have a lot of the detached garages differ because there's no sheetrocking. It's just wood. It's not built for occupancy, so it doesn't have to be under the same codes as our attached garages. And so fire spread in the detached garages could be very rapid too. I'm also thinking of another time of overhauling where we had a couple firefighters get some injuries, and this was in a kitchen, but I think you have even a greater chance in a garage. It was a box of aerosol cans while overhauling. And I think it really shines light on making sure that we're really cooling things down with water in the overhaul stage and letting all these aerosol cans, things of this was paint, as they were shoveling equipment, just the shovel just nicked this aerosol can and some cans blew up and it sent 2 guys to the hospital. But luckily it wasn't a pesticide or something else that could have been more harmful. But garages are full of this kind of stuff, cans of paint and aerosols and pesticides, and we have to make sure we really cool things down and slow down our aggressiveness of shoveling stuff out into the driveway.
One topic, but we have got about 12 minutes left, and it's something we talked about: hose deployment. We talked about, attacking from the interior, hitting it head on from the outside, and the different characteristics of garages and construction. And one thing that I've seen stumble people up and tripped us up on different occasions is getting into a garage that you're trying to get in from the exterior, especially the overhead door. There's a lot of techniques out there, and I think it'd be a good idea to mention some of those techniques, how the pros and cons of them, to help the engine companies that, we don't get trucks. We don't have truck companies. So a lot of times we are having to do multiple things at multiple times. And we have taken garages where we've had a protective line on the interior, made small cuts in the garage door to knock it down before we really completely remove that door.
So your engine companies all carry saws? Are they circular saws or chainsaws?
We have both. We have chainsaws and circular saws. Because we're assigned by when you arrive.
Okay. And so they will open the door with a circular saw typically? Yeah,
typically. Like the last one we had, it was the door. They could just go down the sides and cut the slot bars, and they push the door right up. But I know there's a lot of different techniques. I'd like Sam and Clark to kind of split some time here on how you guys attack these doors.
All right, I'd like to share one of the most embarrassing experiences I've ever had on the fire service. It was my very first fire as a captain. It was a garage fire, 3-car garage. We were second in. First company shows up. They put a 2.5 down. The 2-car garage door is already open. 2 cars burning there, and then there was a 3rd car in the garage fully involved as well. The 3rd single-car garage door was down. So first hose line, 2.5 off the back of the engine. They're putting water on the fire immediately. My engine company shows up. We decide to take an 1 3/4. There was a window on the Bravo side of the garage, so we decided to take an 1 3/4 fog nozzle into that window. So we had 2 lines going into the garage. Now all the lines are deployed. We're doing good. We're flowing water. I tried to get this door open, the single door that was down. We had to get that door open, and it was hot. It was warped. That car behind it was just rolling. So I have a Halligan with me. I take my Halligan and I drive the pike in right above the seam of those doors. Now, the reason you want to go right above the seam of the door is because on the back of the door, if you notice, that metal's rolled up a little bit where those panels come together and they lay together. It provides a little more metal to grab. If you just put a pike in the middle of the panel, it's just a real thin aluminum. You're going to pull that pike right out. So I throw the pike in, baseball swing, put that pike right into that seam, and I rotate the pike down to capture that material. And I give it a little tug, and it has a little go on it. And by the way, you want to do this in the middle of the door because that's the weakest part of your door. You're trying to bend the door and trying to pull the wheels out of the tracks. So I give it a little tug. It starts to go, and then I yank it, and the whole door blows off. All the wheels come off, and I go backwards. I get caught up on the 1 3/4 line in the driveway. I fall flat on my back. I'm laying on my bottle, and the door lays completely on top of me like a blanket. It probably is 500 degrees. I have leather gloves on. I'm not even wearing fire gloves. I've got my leather gloves on. So I'm laying under this 500-degree door. I'm screaming like a little girl. I'm in the driveway in front of everyone. And by now, the whole alarm's arrived. And I am on my bottle like a turtle under this blanket, screaming like a little girl. I wish someone had that on video. But my very first fire as a captain.
Oh, you don't know how bad we wish we had that on video.
Yeah, it'd definitely be at a retirement party.
So that is one technique. That can work pretty good. The bigger doors, obviously, you're getting a little more muscle to get those big doors off. But you want to get that center of the door to pull in, and that way it pulls those wheels out of the tracks. What do you have, Sam?
We actually had to take one down the other day. I was on an engine. It's kind of like college experimenting. So anyways, we had to take one down, and all we had was hand tools. We went the other way with it, but same concept. You know, when we're doing a box cut on a garage, we want to be in the middle of those garage door panels and get away from the horizontal bracing, get away from the track attachments, and make our cuts a lot easier. But when we're doing the technique like what you're saying, or where we actually took the Halligan and we just drove on those reveals in the panel and just took it off its wheels and pushed it in and got in the door pretty quick. But if we do have circular saws, the first thing that we teach our guys that we promote is come up and pry up on the bottom of the garage door and see how much slop you have. If you have a lot of slop in the garage door, you may not have to actually make that triangle cut at the bottom, which will save you a little bit of time. But you also might find out that the garage door is going to roll up for you. So it's kind of a try before you pry and a step to try to alleviate time on the saw. Other than that, we're going to try to get our top cut done first because we're using diamond blades instead of abrasive. And so we don't have to worry about the radius diminishing. And then we're going to come down the sides and get that, leaving a healthy overlap. Probably the one that sticks out the most for me was we had an air gas where they fill like welder bottles, things like that. And so we could hear tanks popping off behind the garage door, and we left a very healthy overlap on that garage door till we finished our cut. So we come across the top, we're going to come down, and if we need to, we'll make the triangle, push it in, cut the rail, and then we'll come up and finish that top intersection cut. And then the nice thing about that is if we bring the garage door to us, if we don't like what we've done or we end up needing to control ventilation for some reason, then we can always shut that garage door back in a lot of situations. In other situations, by keeping that weight on the springs or whatever system is used to help pull that garage door up, we don't have that massive or quick retraction that causes problems for us and causes rails and components above us to fall. Does that make sense?
You know, if I could, I think that's excellent, Sam. If I could throw in one quick thing here, Jason, before we run up to the end of the hour, a couple of things that jumped out at me, and I just want to mention it, especially after Sam's little talk there about alternative ways to get those doors open. We talked a little bit about bringing a tow truck company. Don't forget, we still have come-alongs on all our rigs, easy to set up, quick to use. Doesn't take a whole lot of energy and effort to pull out a car or pull away a door. Also, keep in mind human behavior. Nowadays, most folks drive into their garage, close the garage door, and enter their home through that man door off the garage into their house. So very common in most of suburbia. So if that's what they're doing, under pressure, stress, that's how they're going to exit, or that might be a place to look for victims if you have a house fire that may have articulated up through the garage or unbeknownst to the homeowner. And they just started to exit the way they always exit. So pretty interesting. Also, for the Midwest and Southwestern folks, and keeping in mind our dear friends in Louisiana who suffered from a tornado yesterday, remember storm shelters are often built into these garages as well. And they're just like an oil pit, if you will, in an old gas station where they used to have the oil pits, or if you've ever been to Zip Lube, they've got the pits where you drive over. That's what these storm shelters are like. And if that storm shelter door isn't secured, when you step on it, it can open it, and you could be in for a 5-foot or 8-foot drop into that storm shelter, which can be a catastrophic injury. It's like a hidden hazard, if you will, in garages today. So I just want to bring up, human behavior, some of the hidden challenges and hidden things inside of these garages that we may or may not be thinking about when we go in, because we're thinking about just the fire. But as we drag an apparatus or a car across that storm shelter, we could inadvertently open up that pit and have a problem we may not have been thinking about. And they're in widespread use across the the tornado-prone areas of the United States, everywhere from the East Coast to the West Coast, and everywhere in between, where tornadoes are a constant hazard. So, and just want to throw that in there.
Yeah, and you mentioned apparatus, and it reminded me of just apparatus positioning. I don't know if we talked about it, but especially houses where you're going, you know, the garage or the driveway is sloping down towards the apparatus. Have the apparatus, if you can, uphill of that, because any of these flammable liquids that might be coming from a car or other material just stored in the garage may be flowing down. Just think of how that's going to be flowing. You don't want it to end up flowing under your apparatus if that light's off.
I couldn't
I think
unmute.
you're
Sorry.
muted there, Jason.
I was trying to unmute, and I'm missing that one tip on there. But the one thing I was thinking of when Sam was talking about the cuts, and I bet we've all seen this, and it sounds obvious to most of us and probably the people listening, but you know, I can remember on more than one occasion having a rockin' garage fire and trying to get access to the garage and watching a company just beat the crap out of this door and beat the crap out of this door and beat on this door. You know what? If you're having a tough time, at least get a small enough hole to get the nozzle in there and at least start putting some of the fire out. You know, if you can't get it all off right now, fine, but at least get yourself a space big enough to at least get some water on the fire until you can finally finish removing it and get inside there. But, and I know I've been guilty of that. You get focused, right? You get focused on what you're doing, and this thing is just blazing and going and going and going, and you're going to get the door, right? I'm going to get this door no matter what.
You know, I was having a conversation with retired Chief Morris, and we were talking about the TP cut. This is some years ago. He might be watching. He says he watches these sometimes. But we were talking about the TP cut, and it was really came about, and it's not an attached garage, but you have all these storefronts with living spaces above, and a house is just a smaller version of what they're dealing with in, you know, areas of New York City or other cities where you have a commercial space living above. And the TP cut, our dispatch is talking, it was the fastest way to get water on the fire, because some other methods of cutting a door are, some other methods of cutting doors are successful, but they're not as quick to get water on. With the TP cut, you have one cut, and as soon as you start making that second cut and it's starting to peel down, you could start getting a stream into that occupancy. So it's not something that maybe is necessary on a warehouse or something, but on a storefront or even a garage, you get water on the fire much quicker as the person's still cutting down and that stream's going through the top of that TP. We're getting water on really rapidly.
All right, so we're almost at the top of the hour, and we'll give everybody about a 30-second parting shot, and we'll call it a day. Sam, what do you want to leave us with?
We talked about large homes, just getting multiple lines, getting enough people there to do what you need to do. The last statistic that I have was 9 years ago, 26% of new home construction was over 3,000 foot. That means that 26% of the homes that started being built 9 years ago were commercial size.
Wow, yeah, they're getting huge, no doubt about it. Hey, Clark, how about you?
I just want to say thank you for watching, and again, keep Mike Dugan in your thoughts and prayers. And I think the young guys rocked it pretty good without the old guys. What do you think?
Yes, we did.
Awesome.
Yes, we did.
That's right. Hey, Daryl, closing thoughts.
Yeah, and I was thinking about this earlier when we opened the hour, talking about the 9/11 victims still continue to grow with the problems they were exposed to on 9/11. But us as firefighters and everybody out there, we're all getting exposed to the same types of things every day in these buildings, residential and commercial. And if you don't have some type of program where you get an annual physical, get yourself an annual physical and get yourself tested every year, because if they find any type of cancer or lung problem or cardiac problem, you want to find it as soon as possible. So we should all be striving to get ourselves checked and make sure we're staying healthy.
No doubt about it. Thanks, Daryl. Chief, thank you so much for letting us do this.
Well, thank you all for joining us. There's no such thing as a standard or a routine fire. We just need to move past that. As all the examples that were brought up today point out, that you need to be engaged and focused every time you roll out the door. We call it being green 2, having a downrange mentality. If you approach these fires with a cavalier or unaware attitude, you're going to get yourself in trouble. Garage fire can take you out, as Daryl mentioned earlier, just as easily as any other fire. I had a firefighter 25, 30 years ago fall through a roof into a garage. We had no idea that the roof line articulated, 2-story house articulated straight through the garage at that time due to some renovations, constructions inside the house. Could have never known that from looking at the house from the outside. So just remember, every firefight requires your full attention and your utmost focus. Thank you for joining us today on this Humpday Hangout. Thank you to Key Hose for your sponsorship and your continued support of FDIC. If you're going to go make FDIC and you're looking for hands-on training classes, they're filling up fast. Also, 80 great workshops, the iWomen conference within a conference, amazing group of folks speaking there, one-day thing on Monday, so you can still see the rest of the conference. Please take advantage of that. And if you're not a subscriber to Fire Engineering, you're missing out on some incredible content from the very best minds in the fire service, and that would be you.
Thanks, Chief. So this concludes today's Humpday Hangout on behalf of the panel, and especially for Bill Gustin and Mike Dugan, who couldn't be here today. Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Key Hose. Thanks, Fire Engineering Pinwell, Chief Halton, and we'll see you in a month.